Hey, this is Matt Wimmer from Brady Precision. In this video, we are continuing on looking at Niagara Basics, and this time we're going to be jumping over into alarms. Last video, we looked at generally points and things, and building off of that, because we need to know a little bit of those points-related foundations, we're going to be looking at how alarms are handled and work within Niagara 4. So let's jump right in and get started. All right, so as always, we are back in our demo station, and where we are going to want to be is underneath our config and services. We will see at the very top, most likely this is going to be the top for you, is the alarm service. So we're going to double click on that, and we're going to get to a wire sheet. What you will see is two things by default. We can ignore that database configuration object that's at the top, and first set our sights on this alarm class and the ideas of an alarm class. Alarm class is essentially a category that we can put individual alarms into. Really good example, classic example of this would be you have a general alarm class and then something like an urgent alarm class. They can get routed in different ways to different people depending on your needs. So your urgent alarm class could go to a wide variety of people. The normal one could just go to an alarm console and not even get sent out as an email. So, knowing that, let's open up our palette here and we'll go to the alarm palette. And this is going to have all the goodies that we'll need to use in our alarm service. At the very top, there is the printer recipients. I've never actually used that before, but I imagine it still works to be able to print out to something like a dot matrix printer or something like that for your alarms. Typically, your alarms are going to instead be going to recipients, normal recipients. So that's going to be a console recipient or a station recipient. If you're doing something like a supervisor with subordinate JACEs, we'll look at that and the concepts of that in a future video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out a console recipient, and then I'm going to route my default alarm class into my console recipient. So now any alarms that are flagged or tagged with this default alarm class, they will automatically show up in my console recipient. If I double click on my console recipient, you'll see there's nothing here at the moment, but we can make that happen by adding an extension to one of our points that we already added in previously. So I'll scroll down in my nav tree and go to my playground, and I'll open up a new tab. What I'm doing is I'm holding down Control on the keyboard, double click on playground, and that'll open up a new tab for that location. And I'm just going to do this Boolean writable as the point that I want to alarm based on. And before I do that, I'm actually going to set this to disable. So what I want is when it goes enable, I want to trigger an alarm for whatever reason, just for demonstration's sake here. So I'll double click on that point, and then I will open up my extensions. You'll see there's a ton of different options we have for extensions depending on our needs. You're only going to probably use a handful of these, but the options are there for others. So an out-of-range alarm is exactly what it sounds like. If you had a numeric value and you wanted to set a range and alarm when you were outside of that range, say an acceptable room temperature, you could set that up with the out-of-range alarm extension. And then we've got some float limit extensions, some string change of value alarms. That's going to be if a string value changes to something else, you could alarm based on that. In our case, what we're looking for here is a Boolean change of state alarm. Basically, when the state of a Boolean point changes to a given state, we want to alarm based on that. So I'm going to select that extension, drag it over on my point. We can leave that name as the default and then open up our extension to have a look at what's inside here. We've got a whole bunch of delay options in here. So if you wanted to wait a specific amount of time before the point goes into alarm, you could set that here. So if you wanted to delay, say 5 minutes before you go into alarm, you could set that here in our time delay. Vice versa, you can also set for the time to normal. We can choose if we want to just alarm when we go to our out of normal state or our to-fault state. We'll see in a moment here where we define those. And then we've got some timestamp stuff in here, how long we've been in our current state. All of these things and values are accessible for you if you wanted to do further things on them. This is sort of at the heart of Niagara. All of these values are not necessarily manipulatable, but you can pull them out and use them to trigger other things, display on a graphic, log, etc., etc. Our source name is going to be the name of the alarm. So in this case, it's going to be parent.displayname. We'll get to what this is. This is called B format. We'll get to looking at this in a little bit more depth. I believe we have some other videos on the YouTube channel as well if you wanted to take a look at what that is. But basically what it's saying is that the parent object to this object, I want to have the alarm called the display name. So it's going to be parent object for our extension, which is going to be the Boolean writable. So the alarm name for the source is going to be Boolean writable. Then we can set some text depending on our different states. If you wanted to give additional information, descriptions for what the given state or what the given alarm means, you could do that here. If you wanted to set a hyperlink that you could trigger or hit from the alarm once it's in your alarm console, you could do that here. You can also set up some sound files, a different icon if you wanted to do that, all in here. And then we get to our algorithms. So our fault algorithm would be, for certain use cases, you could have a need for that, for if you're no longer trusting the value or something like that. Most of the time, you're going to be focused specifically on the off normal algorithm. This is where we're going to say what our alarm value is. So the default is pulling in enable as the alarm value. That's what we wanted in our use case that we talked about here at the top. And we want to use that default alarm class. If you had additional alarm classes, they would show up in the dropdown, and you could set them here as well. So that is everything that we need to know about this given extension. You will have obviously different off-normal algorithms depending on what your alarm extension is. So as an example, I'm just going to really quickly pull up this out-of-range alarm extension. If I go to my off-normal algorithm, you'll see that I have a high limit, a low limit. I can also set a deadband. I can choose whether or not I just want the high or the low. It's all configurable, and these things will change depending on the given extension that you're looking at. So on our Boolean writable, we're all ready to go. So I'm going to jump back over into my alarm service, and I will pull up the console recipient now for that. I'm going to go back into my Boolean point, and I'm going to trigger this. So I'm going to send it into enable, and then you'll see that I got an alarm that's showing up here. And then my console recipient also has the alarm. I can double click on the alarm and see all of the different times that maybe it's gone in and out of alarm. So if I just acknowledge this, and you'll see that it's no longer red because it's been acknowledged. And if I go back to the alarm and I tell it to go back to auto, which is going to go disable, and you'll see it's now green because it's in a normal state, and I can acknowledge that as well, and then it will go away. But if I go back into alarm again, you'll hear that horn, and then if I open it up, you can see that we're back in alarm. I can acknowledge it and go about my business. We also have the ability to add in notes here if we wanted to. For our given alarms, we can filter things, hit the hyperlink if that was set, and then we can also pull in this alarm console into a PX file, into a graphic, and we'll show that in a future video when we're specifically looking at graphics. So that's just a quick and simple overview of the alarm functionality that's built into Niagara, the basic alarm functionality, the stuff that you need to get off the ground and running with using alarms. Really simple. We've got our alarm class to set our category of the alarm. We've got our consoles, which are going to be where we are going to look at our alarms. We didn't look at something like an email, because we'll look at that as that's a separate service and configuration that needs to be done in order to make that happen. But that could also be wired in along with our alarm class. So depending on your needs, you have that functionality as well. And then on our points that we want to alarm on, we're just throwing an extension on top of those to make that all happen and work. So thanks as always for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below if there's something specifically in the alarm stuff that you'd like to see in more detail. And we'll see you in the next video in this Niagara Basics series. Thanks for watching.